The paranormal, UFOs, monsters, mysteries. You're listening to Talking Weird. And now, from a cabin deep in the Northwoods, your hosts, Dr. Dean Bertram and Jen Durrell.
Well, hey, baby.
Well, hey, baby.
I keep saying it, but fall has really come to the Northwoods now. It is getting cold out there.
It's cold here.
Yeah, I had to cover the last of my pumpkin patch tonight with.
Oh, you did.
Again, I had to do it a number of times now because the frost is going to come in hard tonight. So,
yeah.
So, what's new in the wonderful world of Jen and the great state of Missouri? Any spooky stories for me this week, dare I ask?
Well, I guess we're talking about the place where I work at. So, sure, there's always something. We have lights that come on. We had that. Of course, I got to go turn them off. We don't really know what it is. So I was working on the floors. We're trying to get them nice and shiny. And so I had a lot of movement, and you can hear and you can feel like somebody's hovering over you. So just the normal stuff, nothing too extravagant. Of course, we did have a door that opened on its own. So
that's pretty extravagant.
Fun times.
Maybe it's because it's the fall and the things from the other world are becoming a little more active.
Yeah.
The veil is down, perhaps, or coming down.
Close to Halloween, yes.
It is. It's very close to Halloween now. Truly is like I said, the spooky season. Speaking of the spooky season, I don't do politics on this show. I know you'd kill me if I did, and I'm relatively politicized in my thinking. I'm often, of course, at the moment, being from Australia initially, everywhere I go, I'm asked, "Oh, it seems really tough in Australia with the lockdowns and the restrictions." And it clearly is. It's clearly quite tyrannical over there. Sorry, people in Australia who disagree with me. But I feel terrible. I've spoken recently to a very good friend in Australia, as well as some family. And I'm not exerting my politics in here anywhere, but all I want to say to people is, don't go along with things that you don't agree with. Don't feel compelled to do stuff. It's important to say no wherever you are and whatever the topic is. If you're feeling pressured to go along with something, don't do it. That's just my message to Australians. Don't comply with things that you don't agree with. And so that's about as political as I'm going to get. That's the American in this old Australian saying don't comply. So anyway, on that very unusual political note for us, which did seem relevant, I'm going to roll into the fun part of the show now, which is tonight's guest. She's a free-spirited soul who has had a natural connection to the spirit world since a young age. She had a first connection to the spirit world since a young age, and she had a first major mediumship communication at the age of 13 when a family member passed away. This experience left her with a curiosity of the spirit world, but she didn't realize she was a so-called medium until a close loved one passed away when she was in her early 30s. This experience then opened her up to an entirely new level of communication to the other side. And from that moment on, she has continued to dedicate her life to expanding her knowledge of the spirit world. She's worked alongside law enforcement, which I'm particularly interested in, and I'll be asking her quite a bit about this tonight, I think, helping them solve missing person and cold cases as a medium. And she volunteers and does this all just for free, just to benefit, providing answers and closure to the victims' families, which is clearly a wonderful thing. Currently, she teaches psychic and mediumship development classes and runs training groups online, travels often for gallery readings, Paracon shows, and most importantly, bringing comfort to those that lost a loved one by validating they are still very much a part of their life. Her goal is to break the stigmas around mediumship and help others find understanding of how it all works. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome to the show, Jessica Potter.
Hey.
Hi. Greetings, Jessica.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
How's the spooky season feeling to you? Does it feel like it's a time of the year when the veil is down, or is that just kind of a bit of an old?
I don't know. It's almost like the theme of the year I swear, I was just talking to another medium that I know in the UK, and we were talking about like it seems like activity's getting even more active. That's what is just weird, is that we're somehow charging it with all that we have going on in the world, or is it like this is going to be our new? Because it's been, at least for me in our house, it's been like way more active.
Yeah.
It's definitely been intense. I don't know. It's yeah, it just seems like to be more common, and so even people are talking about it more often.
Huh. Do you have activity in your house often disrupt you and your family's normal life?
Yeah, we live south of DC, so there's a lot of history here, and we live where natives lived. Our house is actually built on the side of what used to be a river. So yeah, it's like always, and our kids are sensitive too, so like that's our norm. Like
Wow.
we just give them little nicknames and stuff, because I tried my best to like not have them have fear around it. So now it's like just a normal weird thing.
Huh. And so when did you first pick up on your children being sensitive to it as well? Like how old were they?
My son, probably about 2, he said something weird to me about Canon D was playing on the radio, and I remember he was like, "This reminds me of a long, long time ago when we were together a long time ago, and it makes me sad." And I was like, "What?" And he was like, "But we were different." And then he just looked out his window and went back to like talking like normal. I couldn't get him to talk about it. My daughter, she was about 8, I'd say, when it really took off. She held a lot in for a long time. Like we noticed she'd been more scared of sleeping in the dark where she hadn't been. And then she started telling us that, she was seeing soldiers in her closet and stuff. And we lived at Fort Bragg in Fayetteville. My husband's military. So I was like, oh yeah, there's quite a bit of history here. So yeah, it was actually kind of why I got into studying it. I'm like, well, I had these experiences, but not as vivid as my daughter. Mine were always more, I guess, positive type situations, like family members, where she was seeing like really like gruesome stuff that she wouldn't have known what it is.
So she was seeing people like stuck in their death state.
Yeah, like bad wounds. She would hear like, like noises, like them calling for help, but they have like, they can't get the voice out, and there's a lot of blood and gore. Yeah, she was seeing like some darker stuff, and then a lot of elemental type stuff, which is weird. I would see like angelic beings and lights, and I more could get a feeling something was there and start just putting together little pieces. But she would vividly see it, be able to describe to a T, what she was seeing.
Oh, wow.
So what was your first experience?
I'm sorry, say it again.
What was your first experience when it comes to your mediumship, or when you knew that you had?
The first one I can remember, well, that I know now as mediumship, was I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and lived there until we moved away to Iceland and moved back there. But yeah, I was probably about 4th grade, 3rd grade. And my mom had this rule, like we had to come home, like when all the kids left the playground, like you had to come home, even though we were on base. And I remember I got spanked because she came and found me like at the park by myself. And I'm like, I'm not by myself. Like I could see somebody on the swings with me, and I was talking to him. I was like, my friend's here. And she's like, don't be lying. And, so that was one thing I put together. I'm like, dang. My biggest one would be when I was 13. And my uncle passed away. We'd just gotten to South Carolina. My Nana had passed away a few days before, so we were already planning her funeral. And then my uncle that we were staying with had a heart attack, and they rushed him to the hospital. We were at my papa's house, and I heard his voice in my head just say, tell your aunt everything's gonna be okay. Okay. Sorry, I keep getting a mail now that like keeps making my voice want to go out. It's really weird. But yeah, he kind of passed on messages for each one of his kids. And then my mom's from a Southern Baptist family. So when I told her, she was like, oh, no, say you were praying. You were praying. And I'm like, no, it's his voice. Like, you could tell me no different. Like, and that's when I knew like, he definitely was passing on. So that was my first one. That was like, that was weird. But then I thought maybe that's something normal for family members to experience with family members.
Yeah.
I hate to disrupt the organic flow of the show, but I don't know if maybe you have external speakers and they're pointing towards your microphone a little or something, because there seems to be a bit of feedback whenever Jen or I speak on your side. I don't know if you
Okay, let me go run and get headphones. So for some reason it happens with StreamYard. So let me go find
excellent.
my headphones.
Thank you so much. It's no hurry. I really appreciate that. Awesome. Thank you. Well, I feel bad for our audience that I have to disrupt the show, but I think it was better than having the feedback, the old StreamYard feedback, which seems to happen.
We had a problem, I think, last Saturday with a little bit of feedback too.
I think whenever,
maybe it's StreamYard.
Maybe. I think it's whenever headphones aren't used on StreamYard, like Jessica was saying. Yeah. It's interesting that there's Mothman 46, a regular listener saying, let's get weird. Ed Schultz, hey babies, to you too. Hey baby Ed. And Joe, thank you so much for listening, Joe. It's great to have you here.
That was his comment here.
To my advice from before. Thank you, Joe. I speak to a few people in Australia that I feel very, it's a tough situation. I'm just glad I live in a rural cabin in the North Woods where I'm pretty much free to do whatever I want to. Oh, thanks. I'm glad Mothman 46 that you're thinking it's interesting. All right, but Jessica was saying a minute ago how children, her daughter is sensitive as well. Is that something you find in your family, that there seems to be a genetic travel down, Jen? Like, do you feel that maybe there's sensitivity in your children, or there was sensitivity above you in the generations beforehand?
Well, my family doesn't talk about that kind of stuff. I grew up in a Baptist family, so a lot like Jessica. You just don't really. I would try to talk about stuff like that. No, it's not. What about your children? As soon as Wyatt was born, the house was active. So I do know Wyatt would see things. I don't know necessarily playing with anything, but I do know when Josie was really little, she was asleep and he was in the hallway and he came running to me because he said he saw something crawl underneath the crib. And I was like, I don't know if it was an animal or not. So I went over there and he goes, see, can't you see it? So I'm laying down looking for it. He said it had red eyes and it was orange. And I'm like, what the?
Good grief. How old was he then? Did you say about?
Josie was a baby. So he's probably around 5. He was 5. Yeah. Wyatt's been more sensitive or more vocal about it. But now that he's 14, he does. If anything happens, he doesn't talk about it.
Huh. What about Josie now? Do you think she sees things?
She's afraid of the dark. She's afraid of her own shadow. So she still sleeps with me. I mean, come on.
Kids are certainly more sensitive. I know when I was younger, I seemed to sense and feel and see more things. I'm glad that I don't anymore. I'm glad that I don't see, maybe the imagination gets whittled down, or maybe our doors of perception become narrower, but for whatever reason, I certainly
I'm sure it does.
I certainly don't have any encounters, or that certainly not regularly with anything paranormal, which is good. Mm-hmm. And I think Jessica is back with her headphones, which is fantastic. How's that, Jessica? Can you hear us?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, excellent.
Okay.
Is it better?
It's 100.
So. Yeah.
There's no feedback.
I don't hear an echo. Yeah.
Thank you.
I wasn't hearing it on my end. It sounds normal, but it happened on another show too. And then sometimes it works fine.
Yeah, I think what was happening was our audio was looping back through your microphone, but that fixes it totally with the headphones. So thank you. We were just talking about what we were chatting with you a little bit before you kindly went to get headphones, and that's the idea, perhaps, that sensitivity might somehow be, whether it's a genetic trait or not might be the wrong term, but it seems to perhaps follow down certain family lines. Is that something you found with other people who are sensitive as well, that seems to go?
Oh yeah.
Run in certain families.
Yeah, in our family we didn't talk about it. Like my mom, she'd had experiences that like helped save her from a car accident, like where something happened where she just felt like pulled to go in this neighborhood she'd never been in, then a bad accident happened. But even with that, like, she didn't look at it like ability. I found out a while after I came out that my Nana had it as well, my mom's mom. And but she would never discuss it because she was very old school Southern Baptist, and that was something she kept private. What's interesting is my dad is adopted, and it wasn't till last 2 years that I was able to get his birth certificate. Now that they've changed the laws and it's public record, and I found out that his grandma and his mother were like tea leaf readers in England.
Oh,
Yeah, so I was like,
neat.
wow, so that makes a lot of sense. That I would get it from both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but I've also known people that like their family just can't relate to them and has no experience like that.
Yeah.
Maybe
So I
it
don't
is.
know.
Yeah, who knows how? Who knows how these
Yeah.
things of the spirit work?
Yeah. I think it's well, my beliefs are a little bit different. I feel like everybody has abilities. It's just some are far more sensitive. Some are really in tune with it. Some don't care to explore it, or either freaks them out, so they shut it down at a young age. So I think there's lots of different situations. You
Are
know,
we
like
able to heighten those senses then? Are there things that somebody can do to have an increased psychic ability or an increased mediumship ability?
the number one thing I tell my students is just be aware. There's a lot where people do dismiss things as coincidences. Like they'll ask for a sign, they'll ask for, something to start happening, but they might be expecting it a certain way, and they're not, receiving it in, because even though all this stuff is in their face, they're expecting to feel something, see something, hear something.
Yeah.
There's lots of different areas that they use when they connect with you, whether it's, angels or guides or, somebody on the other side coming through. So I feel like when you have an expectation on the way it's going to come in, you could be missing how it happens. So that's what I normally do when I start off a class with students. I ask them what ways they've had experiences, and then normally I can tell a lot from there. So I teach them the other ways to connect that they didn't know they had.
Yeah. So how do you receive your messages? Because I know there's different types of clairs. There's like a whole list of them now.
Yeah. The biggest one I have is clairsentience. So that's where I physically feel things in my body. So it kind of stings. That's why I would say like the male, I could tell somebody like lost their voice or had issues with like a breathing tube. I was trying not to fully connect into them because then he'll like go off. But yeah, I feel a lot in my body, which is why I like working missing person cases, because I can tell if they were shot, they're stabbed, where the wounds are, details around it. But growing up, I was always sick. I would always end up in the hospital, have really severe symptoms, and then just be gone. And we can never figure out why or what was going on. So my parents actually got rid of my cat thinking I was allergic to cats. Then we had to get rid of dog. Like, they didn't know what was going on because the doctors had no clue. But, now that I put it together, it's just, you can get weird symptoms where your body reacts to it. My second one, I would say, is probably clairaudience, where I hear something. And then now I get a lot more of the visual side as well.
Is that more the clairvoyant? Is that the visual one? Okay.
When you hear something, do you ever mistake it for something actually in your space, or is it always clearly a different type of audio experience, if that makes sense?
That's actually a great question. So a lot of times, like when students are coming in, they expect it to be loud, like you're hearing another person. Sometimes it can be in your head, is like the best way. So like if you were to think a word in your head, you would hear yourself say it, even though you're not saying it out loud. They kind of use that. So it can feel like yourself talking to yourself, but every now and then the voice will change. Like you'll be able to hear a male. And then I've had other times where it is like a physical voice that will come with it. And then with people that are clairaudient, you'll get a lot of ringing in the ears. for those that aren't real
Mhm.
in tune with their gifts, or if they are tuned with their gifts, that's the frequency like changing a lot of the times
Mhm.
that will cause that to happen. So it can come in different ways. Even with the ringing in the ears, sometimes it will start like that, and that's them connecting to that frequency, and then they'll have a thought just come to their mind that's completely off track
Yeah.
from anything else. So it's a little bit confusing, but it's pretty unique because it can come in different ways. So it's a little bit entertaining trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I was wondering, how did you decipher between your thoughts and, something else that's coming in? So, I mean, when
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
doing readings, I mean, do you just say like the first thing that comes to your mind, or?
I do now. Yeah. I trust everything I get is where I've had the weirdest stuff come through. You never know what to expect.
Yeah.
And I think that comes with it. You just got to trust what's coming in and not
Mhm.
think too much on it. If you think you're going to be cutting that connection and you're putting your own spin on it. So sometimes you just got to go with the flow.
Yeah.
But there's, for those that are expecting it to be very solid and then to have that constant communication, it's hard for them to hold their energy to that because they don't have a physical body. So it might start that way where you'll hear a word or think you heard a name or something, and then it will go into, it can have you feel something, see something,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of people are like, well, how come they're always off with names? How come people struggle with names? Why can't you just hear the name? But it doesn't always work that way. Like me, I'll always get the beginning of the name, or I can grasp like syllables, because it'd be like, yeah, like you talked about at a distance, or like it's like the volume's turned down. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be a complicated one to learn.
When you're using those type of techniques or tuning in or whatever the term might be, do you think, say you're working a cold case, do you think you're picking up on a psychic imprint, or do you feel that there's actually a spirit consciously giving you those communications, or is it a combination of both? Or
Sorry, I just meant.
Oh. Oh, I knew that was going to happen too.
and
Hang
your
on.
camera
Both
went,
at the
wow,
same time. Hang on.
really the double whammy. It is a spooky season at the moment. Hey, Jessica.
This
Jen's,
is chaotic day.
yeah, I know. Jen's camera
Put
died at the
another
same
one in.
time as,
Oh, really?
yeah,
Isn't
just,
that
I was like,
nice?
oh, they're gonna call it and be like, wrap this one up.
no, of course not. We've had our own children interrupt at different
Yeah,
stages of.
he was asking for melatonin. I'm like, go ask your dad.
No, we understand. Believe me, we had a very funny one. One of the very first video lives we ever did. It might even
Okay.
the first or second video live stream we ever did. We were already an audio podcast, and Jen's daughter ran in at the end and was waving at the guests, and it was just. So yes,
funny.
we've seen it before. But anyway, back to the question quickly, Jessica. I was just saying, does it feel, when you're actually, say, working a cold case, or when you're tuning in those kind of intuitive or mediumship type powers, does it feel like you're reading a psychic imprint or something, or does it feel like you're actually being communicated to by an actual conscious entity that might be in the world of spirit, or however you
It's
want to phrase
always
it?
different. How I can normally tell it's residual is I'll feel the fear or the panic or some sort of emotion for a second, and then it goes to the next piece. When you're communicating with the spirit, like, you're gonna have, sometimes they come in wanting to talk about everyday stuff because to them, like, they've already made peace with their death. But I tend to go into working cases where I use more of my psychic senses, because a lot of times people, their death can either happen so fast, say it's a car accident, or if there's alcohol or drug overdose involved, a lot of times they won't remember everything or know everything. So I tend to do things like remote viewing and see what they last saw, get a sense and feel for the area. So I work a lot with the psychic senses, but It can be both. I had a lady recently that booked an appointment with me, and she told me, I know my husband's gone. I just need help find his body. And I didn't want to know. Also, the more you know about it, the more hard it makes it, because then you're going to fight everything coming in and try and make it fit what you know. So that was all she told me. And I immediately felt him coming through, show me, like he showed me him eating a pizza, and he's making jokes so he could eat all the pizza he wants. So I knew he's on the other side, but that's also not my place to tell. You know, I didn't know how she knew that her husband was gone and stuff. So I paid attention to the psychic things that I felt going on around. I picked up on a dive team being around. And so I asked, you know, is there searching in water? Are they looking for vehicle and stuff? And he showed me where he went.
Sorry.
Oh, you're okay. He showed me, they'll mess with electronics too.
Apparently.
Everything.
This is never, mind you, we've never lost Jen's camera before during a show, so this is new as well. But anyway, this has
They have been messing with all sorts of stuff lately. It's, you know, it's just been like really stirred up. I don't know how, but it's like everything lately. They've been able to manipulate a lot more. But with this male, so I was already getting the mediumship stuff, you know, that he was wanting to pass through, but I needed for her to be able to be open to that. And through her talking, she finally said, like, I know he's on the other side if he has anything to say. And he brought up the pizza again, and you know, she started laughing. So I guess she put him on a diet. So he would sneak to the gas station and eat the pizza there and then hide the boxes in the car. So she lost it laughing. But when I was connecting into that one to see what happened, he did show me some pieces. I was seeing where he was driving the last few stops he made. And I could feel like worried about money, wanting to take care of family, worried about health. And then the rest was more of my psychic senses, where I saw how his car went in the water, why they missed it when they passed over it. And, you know, he had like such a strong personality. It's like he knew, like, no matter what, that was going to be the outcome. He just wanted to not put the family through financial debt, dealing with his health issues and stuff. So that one was kind of an odd one where I use a mixture of it. But most of the time, if I go on my psychic side, is how I'll get the more helpful information for law enforcement, I guess I could say.
Huh.
Yeah. So do you have like a spirit guide that gives you the messages, or does it come straight from?
Most of the time it comes from them.
Okay.
Like, I do have lots of spirit guides around. I guess I'm kind of unique and I don't focus too much on that. I've felt so many around me since I was a kid. I do have a strong connection to angels. When I'm going through something, or somebody I'm working with is going through something, I'll see the colors come in and be able to tell like what angels are working with them, or what their main concern is, whether it's health issues or stuff like that. But most of the time when I go into appointment, I'm open to the energy of their loved ones coming in, and then go from there.
Okay. Have you ever felt any spiritual consciousness or energy try to manipulate you or maybe deceive you?
Yeah, that numerous times. So I tend to get like, let me see the best way I can describe this. When I've come across like a negative entity, like when I've been in a place that's had just brutal history, a lot of violence and stuff, and there's lower level things there, I'll start getting a headache, and then I'll start getting like sharp stomach pains, really intense stomach pain. So that has become my sign, where when I start picking up on that, or the information isn't making sense, like if I'm saying, can you validate this another way, or can you give me another piece, and they jump way over here or give half messages, that's when I'm like, okay, this is just somebody, you know, wasting my time. So that's when I tend to cut the connection and pull back.
Do you have trouble with those type of energies following you home ever, or continuing to be disruptive?
No. One of actually Missouri, as one of the most intense ones I had in as long as I can remember. I saw this
Really?
being, and he wasn't tied to the land. He was tied to somebody that was there that had done satanic rituals and
Mm.
opened up something that he shouldn't have.
Mhm.
But it showed me where it was like grabbing on his neck. And I don't know if you ever saw the movie Descent with the little cave creatures.
Mhm.
It looked just like that.
Oh,
Gosh.
So
wow.
first it was trying to like weird me out by like twisting its neck and breaking its neck. And I just kind of laughed it off. I'm like, get out of here. You know, and when you ignore them, most of the time they move on. They're like, hey, this one's no fun. You know, I can't really get a rise out. But this one, he kept coming back. And first time ever, I had to leave a location and actually go get sick outside, like
Oh,
just close to
really?
no warning, like trying to set up. And I was like, wow, okay. And yeah,
Gosh.
it was just different, but I could feel I also had just broken my tailbone like a week and a half before. And when I was ignoring it, it was like messing with my pain level with my tailbone. And that was something new too. And I said, I'm a child of God, you can't touch me. And like this whoosh like came over and it was just like it was pushed out my area. So it was just different for them to be that aggressive. But yeah, it was just like it was gunning for me. But I don't tend to worry about it. And maybe because I grew up in a church or I have like where I have such a close relationship to God and angels, like I can tell that I'm being taken care of, I'm being protected. I feel like I was put on this mission for a reason. I've always felt like there was something big I was supposed to do here, just didn't know what. And yeah, so I haven't had too many issues with it. If any issue I've had with it has been my own doing. Like I start listening to EVPs and, you know, reviewing
Yeah.
evidence. And then I start
Yeah.
thinking about this. And before I know it, I had called them in.
Ah.
Yeah. So
So
it's very rare.
is that how it works though? If you listen to EVPs, is that like, a lot of people say that spirit boards, they say that spirit boards are communication. And then if you're the EVPs is also a way for them to come through. And I wasn't sure if that was legit or not, but it's definitely a way that they can come
I
through.
mean, if you think about it, everything's leaned back to that energy and that exchange. But I think mine was more because I'm a medium. I naturally
Okay.
go into talking to him because to me, it's so interesting to talk to him. So I do it all the time without paying attention until I start getting drained. And then I'm like, oh yeah, okay. That's where I start being aware of like, what communication I've been having. So when I was reviewing the evidence and getting this piece and that piece, I could hear me talking about some of the stuff I was experiencing. So then I was like, I wonder about this with that guy, and I wonder about that. And then before I knew it, like I could feel him like in my home, and I was like, oh my gosh, nope. So I think it can be around your mindset. I know plenty of friends that can mess with a spirit board and have no issues with it at all. They know what they're doing. They're going in. They have strict rituals for opening, closing, and so I feel like it's to each their own with that. But I feel like if you have a fear around that, you could accidentally be calling that in because there's ones out there, just like there's a-hole people, there's a-hole spirits that would love to play off of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what type of rituals do you do? I mean, like before and then after when you go maybe into a haunted location?
I think the biggest one is water. Maybe because I'm a Pisces, I don't know. I've always worked with water a lot. So I just do something simple like washing my hands, and I look at it like this is me cleaning my energy, opening up. And then afterwards, I wash my hands and look at it's like I'm rinsing off all the energy I connected with, and then I'm recharging myself. So that's just a simple one I do. And I do like sage. Not so much for chasing spirits away, some people think, but I can feel like a calm that comes over. It kind of like levels my energy from being all over the place or because you kind of get staticky when you have all these connections going on. It kind of builds up the energy around you. So to be able to calm that down, I tend to do sage, and that's pretty much it. Other than that, I just jump right in and go for it.
Okay. Do you use crystals or anything like that?
Oh, I have certain ones I'm drawn to, but it's
Yeah.
I have like labradorite I like that one for calming and protection, or like when you're having a chaotic day. But I don't tend to make that like a ritual, like I have to have it. And if I don't have
Okay.
it, I try to be careful with that. Some people feel like you have to do it this way and that way, but I feel like a lot of it is about your intention. So if you
Yeah.
get too stuck in that, then it becomes like a blankie, and then you feel like,
You have to do
I'm
it.
doing it wrong.
Yeah.
I have to ask Jen, like,
Yeah.
are you sensitive yourself?
I think so. I mean, I've had a lot of experiences growing up. I mean, I even saw my great grandmother when I was 4. I had never met her before, so.
Yeah, that's why I was
So,
wondering, because I keep feeling like there's a lot around you, and it's like you can feel too when they're around, or like when you're
oh
being
yeah,
watched.
I'm never alone.
Yeah.
I never feel alone. Mm-mm.
And you've never explored it?
I have. I explored it when I was in my 20s, and I was reading a lot of Wicca and stuff like that, just trying to learn about different religions, And I followed one of these books, got like a white candle and the sage, and was trying to learn to do that. And I was like, well, let me, do this a little further, because I had friends that would come over to my house afterwards. We'd go out, get drunk, come back to my house, have karaoke parties, and it was weird is that when I was, had way too much to drink, I was so relaxed because I am full of anxiety all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I was relaxed, and I just kept
That
getting
might
these
be why
thoughts that
mine's
came
so
in.
bad. That's interesting, because I was like, why is my anxiety so high tonight?
Yeah.
But go ahead,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. And so it would come in, and I had friends that had lost their loved ones, and I would tell them, and then I would be doing fairly good. And they're like, okay, well, what about this? And I'm like, okay. So I wait, and I'm like, okay, this is what I heard. And they're like, what? So then I started doing readings and stuff like that, just for fun, just to see if I was tapping into it. And I was doing fairly well. And then I had something come through, was trying to confuse the heck out of me, presented itself as my grandfather, and I automatically knew what it was, and it showed itself to me, and it laughed its ass off. After that, I was like, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to, see if I could tap into it. And I guess I did, and something else found its way. So.
Yeah. That's the hard part. And that's why I try and tell people too, like mixing drinking with it, because
Oh yeah.
Like if I'm at a bar, I don't tell people what I do. I'm like, oh, I'm a boring housewife, or whatever. They're always like, read me, and like that's the worst time. Is like when you open up too much. Down. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's what I was feeling like you pick up on quite a bit. I was wondering like why.
Yeah.
So you feel like that's messed you up from.
Well, that experience really, I just stayed away from it, because I had another one when I was 21. Something leaned over my pillow and said something to me, and I'm the type of person, when something traumatic happens or something I don't understand, I block it. So I just didn't know how to deal with it. So I shoo it away.
Yeah.
So
makes sense. Yeah. My sister, she's also sensitive. And she's had like the darker experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Like she's seen the lower level beings. And so she always jokes, she was like, I swear it's like our railroad tracks are just set up differently. Mine goes straight through hell, and you get all the pretty butterflies.
Oh,
and I don't know why it's been like that. I do see now more lower entities. But I think that's part of the work I was doing. Like maybe I would have shut down too, because I'm like that too. I want to know the answers. I want to understand something.
Yeah.
And if it feels out of control, especially having anxiety, then I'm not going to put up with it. So I totally see that.
How did you get involved with working with law enforcement, Jessica?
The first time it was kind of like 2 cases back to back. The first time was a family friend of ours. Her daughter went missing, and her daughter's girlfriend at the same time. So my mom grew up with her. And this was right after I said, I'm studying and taking psychic class. Kind of came out of the little psychic closet to my parents. And so my mom was like, well, if you can do anything with it, you might as well help. So, see if you get anything. And I said, okay, I'll try. But, I've never done this before. So I wouldn't even know where to start. She was like, well, just write down what you get and, reach out to her, or she might reach out to you. I'll let her know. So the mom reached out to me the next morning and said, hey, I'm curious, did you get anything? And I got like a few different things, but I didn't try to tap in too deeply because it's like, I don't know what I'm doing yet. Like I haven't been trained in this area. But speaking to the mom, she said, I know she's on the other side. I heard her talking to me when I was out feeding the horses. If you could just tell me anything you got. And as soon as she said that, like I saw somebody sitting in a car and a flash go off and felt like heat, like go through my head, like a beam. And then I saw a passenger seat with a bullet hole in it. And then the other girl I was seeing like in water trying to climb up on the side. And so I'm like, crap, like, what do I say? I don't want to like traumatize her more. But I said, did something happen with her car? And she said, yeah, they just found her car in the river, but she wasn't inside. And I said, can you have them look at the passenger seat? And they found the bullet holes. So that's when she said, I'm going to connect you to them. I already knew she was gone, and I want to bring my baby home. I want to bury her. And so when I talked to law enforcement, they said, can you focus on, they couldn't give me details back, but they asked me to focus on a license plate. They gave me a few different tests. And then they said, can you focus on where our bodies are? And I kept telling them I was seeing like down under a tree that had like fallen in the water. Like I could see where one of the bodies was like caught up there. And then I described the land around. And I think it was 2 days later, they found that area and they were able to retrieve her daughter. And it took additional like 4 days to find the girlfriend. But I didn't know what it was at the time, but I got like random numbers and letters. And I just trusted it and told them, and it ended up being part of the license plate.
Wow.
So it was a really weird case period. It was some guy they knew from high school. They ran into him and he said, hey, can you give me a ride? And they said, yeah, sure. And he was going in to kill his drug dealer, and they were going to be his getaway. So when they took off, he chased them down, and the whole thing was really sad.
Gosh.
After that, I was like, okay, if I have this gift, I do want to do something. I want to be able to help. I want to be able to do something for good. Because I don't feel like it's nothing against people that want to know a lot about their love life or want to know about what's coming up in the future. At certain points in your life, I think it helps to have an outside view. But I don't feel like we're supposed to live like that, where we're supposed to know what's coming up. I feel like certain things are meant to move around and change. So I wanted to do, if I was going to do something with my gifts, I wanted it to be more firm and helpful. And I just can't imagine what it would be like to lose a child and not know. Like our dog ran away for 3 days and I didn't sleep because we're, starting to think about a child. So after that, I decided I'm going to reach out to other mediums that work missing person cases. And I found another lady, and when she had so much going on with writing a book and everything. So when detectives would reach out to her that she worked previous cases with, she connected me with them. So then it kind of just spreads through word of mouth. That was how I started. With a couple different detectives. Some were PIs and everything. And then my mentor, Jennifer Schaefer, and I'm sure you've heard Lisa Williams. They have a program that they kicked off called Impartial Witness, where they were training people to help work missing person cases. So you fly out to California, go through like a really intense, like 3-day academy, all sorts of testing. And I mean, it was really cool, but it was extremely hard. I mean, hand you a folder, you can't open it, and you just got to go say what you get in details. But I learned so much from it and made it through the academy. So now I have like a serial number, and so do the other ones. So we get emailed cases. If we resonate with them or get something with them, we go in and answer the question, and law enforcement puts in there just exact questions they need. And then if they are really drawn to somebody and know somebody's right on that, they can reach out and get the person's information or bring them in. So most of those I do by email and submit what I get, and then they're designing a whole program behind it to take, like, for instance, 70% of the intuitives picked up that there was a gun. They picked up a white car. So they kind of break down the information like that to make it easier and more helpful for law enforcement, because, we have no control over some things that come through. We don't know what they mean. So that just leads to more frustration on their end.
Yeah.
Do you find, are there certain departments that are happy to work with sensitives, and there are some departments that aren't? Like, I'm just curious how that connection actually, I always have been, because you think, I suppose, of law enforcement as being hyper rational and skeptical and very worldly, and then you think of the world of mediumship and psychic ability being something else. I'm just wondering how they come together, and I know you've described that kind of academy, and now there's some type of work with law enforcement, but are there any specific departments that do it, or is it something which is fairly common?
So the FBI is connected that one. So oh my gosh, I'm totally going to blank his name. Ted Bundy. Know how he was able to cross state lines and the police departments weren't connecting with each other, and that's how he was able to get away from everything for so long. It's actually, she works with some agents from the FBI in Colorado. And so they wanted to build a network that not only gets law enforcement talking to other states, other counties, but where there's also, a background, a history there of somebody connected into this, and this. And this officer looked into it in that, so they can have better communication going on between them. So they're still building up the funding. COVID kind of set a lot of this back, but it is like we're still actively working cases and stuff. So it's outside of that, I feel most of them that are involved in that have known Jennifer Schaefer. She's worked these cases for over 30 years. So I think there's been a trust that's been built up there in a natural way. And I come from a military family, military husband, have lots of friends that are law enforcement too. So there's been times where they'll call me up and say, hey, do you get anything on this? But I think it more is situations like that. I feel like when it's forced, or when you're like, hey, I get this, or you got this, case, and I'm getting all this stuff. They can't do too much with that. They're overwhelmed as it is. So you have to let them come to you. That's why I always tell my students, let the cases come to you, because it will word of mouth or one way or other. But most of the time, the ones I've found that are open to it are either ones that are sensitive themselves and been hiding it because, they're not going to tell their buddies that. Or they have come across genuine mediums and intuitives, and they understand how it works. Those are the best ones, because you can explain to them, well, I got this piece, that piece, not sure what it means, where, a skeptic is going to be like, come on, And I've had where one detective, I didn't know she was a detective, added me on Facebook, and she followed me for a while. And I think a year or something like that. She said, okay, I've been checking you out, kind of vetting you for a year. And, just want to make sure, got a feel. And she was like, I want to ask if you can help with this case. I said, sure. And she was like, but my business partner is not open to it, but he wants to have a phone call. And I was like, okay. And you could just tell, her, she was all loving and excited. And he was like, why are we doing this? But I just do my job. I feel like it's not my job to explain, because some people are like, tell them how it works, tell them you got this, tell them you got that. And I feel like it's not about testing it. If you go into that, you're going off a ego.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just more I let them come to me, friends of friends, and different cases. There's been numerous ways it's come in, and I do have on my website where I set up an appointment, because you have to vet people. Like there's so many times where suspects are, trying to act like a PI or trying to act like they're working the case to gather pieces. And there's a lot of mediums that get caught up in that, and then they're spilling out stuff, and yeah, it can be messy situations. So I have an appointment where it's basically me get them on the phone and make sure. Also, if it is somebody that's family, there's certain details you tell the family. You don't want to lead them with the trauma. So you're not going to go into the details they're showing you to help solve the case, because that's just going to put the mom through more, put the siblings through more. But yeah, most of the time I always send the money back. They're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I just said, that's the best way I can do it. Make sure because somebody's just toying around. They're not going to, put that much effort into it.
So have you dealt with any of or I guess with the missing 411, there's a big conspiracy behind that, is it aliens, what's taking people? So have you ever had any type of vision or message people? or anything like that kind of pop up when you're...
No.
Okay.
Maybe, I mean, it could be my politics. It could be, no, I think sometimes people don't want to be seen. So that's the easiest way for them to cut ties with family. So they move on. Human trafficking is a really big deal that, it's downplayed a lot. So, no, I've never gotten anything about aliens, and I understand some people do get stuff like that. And I feel like everybody's mediumship is designed differently. Maybe mine's just not designed to hunt down aliens or
Well, the alien thing aside, though, that's an interesting question from Jen, because there are those series of books by David Paulides on missing 411, which deal with people who've gone missing under very strange circumstances, but there's often a pattern or a cluster where people have gone missing for years in the same area, and there's often patterns regarding perhaps the age, or there might be a lot of people with a certain mental disability, or there might be a lot of people who are particularly intelligent, like there's an awful lot of physicists or doctors or things. So there are these strange patterns within the missing 411.
So kind of like the Alaska Triangle.
Yeah, I guess so.
And Bermuda Triangle.
As a follow on what Jen was asking, have you hit those entirely weird way out there missing cases, and have you ever had any sense about any of those types?
Bermuda Triangle, but I'm one of those, I get I already have so much communication going on, or whether it's appointments. I come from a really big family. I've had a lot of death around. So I'm communicating all the time, and I'm not one of those I want to go connect with this celebrity. I feel like if they're meant to connect with you, they will, or to be brought together, they'll have things fall into place type of thing. Because if, that would be annoying if you're trying to do other stuff and you keep getting summoned. So I haven't looked too deeply into it. Sometimes I'm curious about Bermuda Triangle. Definitely think there's something going on there. And I grew up in Alaska, but my dad is also a search and rescue pilot. So in Alaska, and I have friends that are on the Alaska Triangle show that work a lot of these cases and go into the history behind it. But for me, I guess maybe because I put it off on knowing how many people go missing through hiking, falling through crevices, glaciers, caves. I do think there is something with national parks and maybe some beings that haven't been explored. I have picked up on that around caves, and that there's a lot more going on there. I do know some people believe that the government's involved, and like they're letting these creatures come out and are donating people to them or something. I don't know. I try not go too deep into that. I just go off of what I feel. And I do think there's something with that. Bermuda Triangle, I think, is just I'm not sure if that's just a massive portal or something, but there is a lot that's fascinated with me with that one because of the people that have proof around their situations, like where, there's one guy, I think he cut his flight time by 6 hours or something. And he proved it by showing his mileage and when he last filled up and the date and everything, stuff like that. It's like, there's definitely something going on there. But I mean, it could be numerous things, but it's fascinating. But me, myself, I tend to have like more, maybe it's the things I'm more passionate about, like the fight against human trafficking, that I draw more of those type of cases and things in.
Oh, that's interesting. Just quickly before we leave the topic, because it does fascinate me. You talked about maybe things in caves or something I mentioned. Do you ever feel though on that topic? I know there's certainly a long history of what we might call the fair folk or the fairies or the she taking people historically, and maybe some people suggest that continues in modern manifestations. I don't want you to answer whether you think it does or not so much as, do you feel other than spiritual and what you might have defined before as lower spiritual energies, do you feel other non-human contacts or other non-human energies as well, which might resemble something which historically we've identified as the fair folk or the other crowd or the she or any of those type
Do you mean like something that is lower level is trying to fold into acting like that energy? Is that what
maybe,
you're
or something that is that, like it for example, do you have a sense of anything like what historically has been the fairies, for example?
I think they're like, okay, I kind of look at that like and elementals. I look at it like birds. There's so many different species and all different kinds, and some have personalities this way, some have personalities that way. So we lived in Iceland for about 3 years. When I was 3 years old, 6 years old, and I remember gnomes. I remember seeing them. They look like little people, but they would always make me laugh. Like I remember they would do little tricks and stuff. And when we were getting on the plane to leave, they were just like real sarcastic and goofy. And my mom remembers me having a meltdown on the plane, but she didn't remember what I was talking about. She didn't understand, but I kept saying my friends are waving goodbye to me. Wow. And she was like, they're just loading the luggage. But they had like a little mini luggage truck, and they'd all like had like a little mini truck to match the bigger truck and stuff. And I remember being like so sad. I had a full on meltdown. So every now and then I'll pick up on a little playful energy, and I'm like, hey, must be a little gnome around. But I do feel, again, with that, there's all sorts of there's all sorts of beings that could be wrapped up in that. There's been times where, like when we've gone caving with friends or camping, this happened recently in Arizona, that I picked up on something. It's like, I know you're not human and doesn't feel demonic, but it's like, I can't tell what you are. You just feel weird. Wow. Like just different, and my daughter, that's another thing. She's a really good artist. She sees them. Like she'll see these creatures and she'll describe it. And I'll be like, oh, okay, that's cool. Cause now she doesn't have fear around it. She's like, oh, I just saw that weird looking one again. I was like, oh, that's cool. But when she started drawing them, I'm like, dear God, like that's what you're seeing. And she was like, he looks scary, but he's really friendly. Like, and it will look like some crazy creature. But she was like, no, his energy feels like he's just curious. Like he's just, so it's, I think there's definitely a lot there that to be explored.
That's fascinating. Your Iceland story as well, because I know that's one of the few countries that still takes it somewhat seriously, the idea of the other crowd or whatever we want to call them.
And I remember around Christmas time, they have something like 12. I'll have to look into it again, but I remember around Christmas time they put it up everywhere, and they're like mean looking. And it's like, this one, you got to leave him candy by the window and a shoe, or he'll come in and like, steal your soul. Or like, there's like these little myths, but people are very serious about it. So they'll put a shoe out with candy, like a donation. And then the next day you got to do something for another one. But when I grew up, my mom was like, tell me about, she still saved a placemat. They had like placemats they would give you of like what, to expect for the 12 days, as little Christmas reminders of what to do. And I was like, mine were always like goofy and happy, like, or they just like to make me laugh, and my dad was like, I don't know if you remember back in Iceland. And I said, there's a basket robins on the bottom of this floor, because I was 6 years old. And I described the layout of it. My dad was like, you're creeping me out. Like, I remember weird stuff,
Yeah, that's impressive, having that kind of memory retention from when you're 3. That's for sure.
I think maybe because of how you save memories with emotion. So it was like a really happy time for me, even though like in Iceland, it's always cold and windy. So you're inside a lot. But yeah, I remember it being a lot of fun.
Oh, I bet. It's a wonderful thing when you're small to be able to travel to different countries and cultures and experience different things. But what a fascinating life you've led, Jessica. Can you throw out some URLs and ways people can get a hold of you or follow what you're doing? Or I know you teach courses as well. If somebody wants to come and learn with you, how they can do that.
I'm actually getting ready to start I just finished a round of my mediumship course, but I had so many people asking to join. I was like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and fit it in my schedule. So coming this November 3rd, I'm going to start my 6-week course again for the mediumship course. So my website is starloveclarity.com or the Mermaid Medium. And I have courses, I have private readings, I have where you connect to my Facebook groups. I have some funny spiritual ones where we just, very goofy and just support each other in journeys and share like, funny spiritual memes, because some people take it so seriously. And I think, we're meant to have a lot of humor around it. And and then you can see also my events coming up. Don't have anything in person till December, but there's a lot of online stuff that's going on. So keep an eye out for that.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. You were absolutely fascinating. And I hope you and your
Once
family...
we got everything working.
Well, that's the way of it is that time of the year, like we were saying. Maybe it was the fair folk playing with us. So I'm always particularly interested.
They're trying to get through a message. They're like, this one sucks at hearing us. It's so funny.
Oh, wonderful. Well, listen, we'll have to have you back sometime, but until we chat again, have a happy Halloween and keep it weird.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you for joining us tonight. If you're interested in checking out more episodes, you can find us at talkingweird.com. If you haven't already, please like the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talking Weird Podcast. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to Talking Weird. We're available on most podcast platforms and YouTube. And if you do enjoy the show, please leave us a review. Dean and I would really appreciate it. Until then, stay safe and keep it weird.